Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of Donnybrook. This hour, we go for 1 hour. We will talk about the issues of the day in St. Louis, but also we're going to remember and pay tribute to Ray Hartmann, one of the founders of this program back in 1987, who died 1 week ago in a traffic accident. So we'll get into that and more, but first let's meet the panelists. As always, there she is, the media veteran, Wendy Wiese, along with another one of our founders, Bill McClellan of the Post-Dispatch. From St. Louis Magazine, the 314 podcast, and her daily newsletter, Sarah Fenske. And from the St. Louis American, and this morning, the Big 550 KTRS, Alvin Reid, who was paired with Frank Usmano. You did a great job.
We always have fun.
You sure do.
Right.
Well, you know, the top story this week, sadly, is that we lost Ray Hartmann, friend, colleague, and we're going to get into that with a full half-hour tribute to Ray at 1:30 this hour, so don't miss that. But, Bill, you actually had dinner with Ray 2 days before he passed.
Yeah, Ray dropped by the house to chat in the afternoon, and we talked, and then he stayed for dinner. So it was a great blessing, you know, to see Ray the last time, and of course we argued about stuff, you know, but mostly he bragged about his kids, how well everybody's doing. You know, Benjamin graduating from Rolla into this very difficult economy, and he's got a job with Boeing. And I teased Ray, you know, I said, "You've attacked Boeing for years." and Brielle is, you know, doing great at Case Western in the pre-med program. And Ray said, you know, she's never even got a B. And I said, "You never got a B, Ray." and I talked to them at the funeral yesterday, and before I spoke, you know, when we met, and I said, "Is it true, Brielle, that you never got a B?" And she said, "Yeah." I mean, it's remarkable, you know, at a school like Case Western. So she's going to be a doctor, and Ben is going to be working at Boeing. You know, they are a wonderful legacy.
They sure are. Thank you for that.
They are the legacy, yeah.
They, at his funeral, I was just blown away by how poised they were, just how wonderfully they spoke. What they said about their father was just a wonderful tribute. And his son's eulogy, I was like, this kid is a great writer. It's good that he's gone into computer science and has gotten a good job, but I thought this kid could be a journalist.
Right.
It was beautifully written.
I thought for a scientist, both of them are people of science, and they both did a fantastic job speaking to the crowd.
Yeah.
And they were such a perfect reflection of Ray's heart, both of them. You know, they were genuinely sweet kids who were just so articulate and brilliant and thoughtful. And, you know, for all of the celebrated people who were there yesterday to pay tribute to him and to show their love for the man, I think everybody around this table and everybody who was there knew that as much as we will miss him, that is his legacy. And that is, he was such a proud Papa Bear when it came to those two beautiful kids, and they're no longer kids. I mean,
absolutely. Bill, you did a marvelous job speaking.
Yes,
and I said and I thought Bill was kind of like the, represented not only us here at Donnybrook, but pretty much everybody else, because you had family members, you had his close friend and Andy speaking, and then Bill was kind of like the lay speech maker in that he summed it up, Ray's life, and not only individually, but how the whole world looked at Ray. Super job. And as I told Wendy, I said, I kind of teared up at this. Ben's first job is going to be at Boeing, and my daughter's first day at Boeing is tomorrow. And I said, like,
Okay,
you guys
love
would have
it.
been working, maybe not directly together, but, you know, just incredible.
Very cool, very cool.
And Bill
Let-
being, and I'll be so fast, but Bill being the perfect columnist, he came back after he said, you know, Ray, you've criticized Boeing forever. He said at the very end, but Ray really loved Boeing.
I love that. Dude.
Really love
you did a
Boeing.
fantastic job.
Perfect.
And you weren't the only one to pay tribute to Ray. As it turns out, in Jefferson City, the General Assembly took time out of its day. We see in this clip Ray Reid, a Democrat from Brentwood, paying tribute to the late Ray Hartmann.
I rise today with a heavy heart to recognize the life and legacy of a friend, Ray Hartmann, whose passing leaves behind a profound void not just in our media landscape, but in the very civic soul of St. Louis. Ray was a journalist, yes, but he was also a trusted voice, a friend to many, and a steady presence in moments when our region needed clarity the most. Whether through Donnybrook PBS or the pages of the Riverfront Times, he had a rare gift, the ability to cut through the noise with wit, honesty, and a deep, abiding love for the place we all call home. Ray believed St. Louis was worth fighting for, not through volume or spectacle, but through thoughtful, principled conversation. He showed us that disagreement didn't have to mean division, that accountability didn't have to come without compassion, and that the role of a journalist was not simply to observe, but to serve. And in that way, he challenged all of us, especially those of us entrusted with public office, to be better, to listen more carefully, to speak more truthfully, and never lose sight of the people behind the policies, the headlines, and the debates that fill this chamber.
That was Ray Reid, a state representative from Brentwood, and before the evening is over, we're going to see more haircuts that
I was going
Ray
to say,
displayed.
so many hairstyles,
But-
so little time.
But this is Donnybrook, and in the tradition of Martin Dugan, we have to continue and discuss the issues that matter most to St. Louisans, including one bill that includes a guy by the name of James Durnell. He's from Soulard, and for years, for the neighborhood association, he was spraying Roundup all over the neighborhood, and then he contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he says it was the chemicals inside that Roundup. So he sued. Missouri jury gave him $1.2 million, but then Bayer, which is now Monsanto, took this case all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they exchanged views. One side saying, hey, Missouri has a law that says if you have a dangerous substance, it has to be labeled. The other side, Bayer, said, well, the EPA said that it's okay, and federal law says that the EPA determines the labels for pesticides. Among other things, whose side are you on in this case? And don't you think that Clarence Thomas, who worked for Monsanto in the fungicide, pesticide, and rodenticide legal department in the 1970s, should recuse himself from this decision?
Well, that's the easy part. I mean, that he won't. I mean, Monsanto could send him a check tomorrow, and I don't think he'd recuse himself. Whether or not he should, you know, I sometimes think that people's personal experiences, they take with them on the bench and on juries, and so I'm not irate that he's not going to recuse himself, but he certainly won't. As far as whose side am I on, these cases like this, or the talcum powder case here, where you have dueling scientists and they're paid by either side, and you know it's all over a layperson's head, the jury. The only thing you have in the end really is the plaintiff has a defendant, and whether it's Mr. Durnell, who seems like a great person and out there helping the community, as opposed to a company, you tend to, if you're on the jury, I think, say, oh, I think Mr. Durnell, I'll give him $1 million. As far as like who's really right or wrong, I have no idea.
I have always believed that federal statute, that federal law transcends state law. And that seems to be the crux of this case. Every single person at this table, every single person watching has had someone in their life, if or themselves, touched by cancer, by this insidious disease. So there's all the feeling in the world, but structurally there does seem to be something amiss when somebody who lives in Missouri and partakes of, enjoys a THC product and tries to transport that on a federally governed flight, in the air, they're going to get arrested because it is you cannot fly with THC in your possession. So I'm just confused about the structure of the legal argument.
I think when, obviously somebody has been harmed or a court said somebody has been harmed, I understand that it's an attorney's job to, okay, we're going to fight this. But $1.2 million and you're bare and this could all be over.
Well,
That's the
tippy.
They have 100,000 lawsuits, maybe 200,000 lawsuits waiting, and they've already dished out like $7 billion.
Picked this one because they thought this one would get them out from under all of the other ones, which could destroy this company. So I think they very carefully handpicked which one they wanted to take up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, I will say this. If the Trump administration or other administrations gut the EPA, we're no longer going to be able to rely on the EPA for scientific advice. In this particular case, the substance is glyphosate, and the journal, which in the early 2000s had this seminal report saying that glyphosate is safe, well, that journal in January retracted the article because they found out that Monsanto was providing data to the researchers, which is a huge conflict of interest, and there's the possibility that the researchers were getting paid by Monsanto.
Well,
so if that is...
Charlie, thank you for making the argument for me that I was about to make, which is if federal regulators are asleep at the wheel, it's a good thing to have some of these states come up and try to do something on behalf of the people. And I think, maybe 10 years ago, I would have been really sympathetic to this argument that we have to have the feds take the lead on stuff. The feds have shown themselves to be utterly incompetent. At this point, the feds are showing themselves to be corrupt. If we can get some states that can actually do something a little more sensible, I guess we've opened up this Pandora's box where it's like the states have to take the lead on everything because we can't count on the federal government to do anything.
But is that really a news headline? We have never. I mean, look at all of the cases made against FEMA. So I mean, all of these questions about the EPA. When did the EPA become so revered? That's what I'm trying to.
Well, if you fire everybody that works there, that means that some things are obviously going to slip through the cracks. It's not wishful thinking, but Donald Trump's not going to be president forever, okay? And whoever the next president is will either very loudly or very quietly reinstitute some of these people that have been fired because our government is not working right now.
But who's going to take that job knowing that the president after that might fire them?
If I get a good 4 years in.
Yeah, well, what's kind of funny is this.
And as far as where the truth lies, I know a farmer in New Douglas, Illinois, who has contracted cancer, and we were talking about it, and he said, I think it's all the chemicals now. We're putting chemicals in everything.
Well,
and it's hard to argue, but I don't know.
The attorney for this Durnell was Wiley Blair, who works for the Onder law firm. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting to me, Sarah, is that you guys reported at St. Louis Magazine that the Onder law firm, in addition to the pre-reported story that a law firm is actually heading up a $20 billion development in Ferguson, the largest ever in the history of our region, if not our state, right? They're now buying up homes in nice Webster groves. And some of them are not in good shape. So they buy a bunch of homes on the street and they're not taking care of them.
Yeah, so this has been sort of quietly going, it's been happening for quite some time. And my reporter, Samir Knox, I have to give him the credit for this. He heard this was happening, wanted to get to the bottom of it. The neighbors are saying, we are not sure why Jim Onder has been quietly sort of pouncing on every home that becomes available on our street. These were historically the homes that people could use to get a foothold in a place like Webster, your classic starter home. Now he's buying them up. They're not really sure what he's planning to do with it. He made the argument to Samir that he's actually helping Webster, that he feels like, it needs a better sort of entry point in that part of Webster, and that he's keeping rent below what it would be. And in his defense, Samir and I did look into this bigger picture of, landlords are scarfing up what used to be homes for families that couldn't get a big McMansion. And there is a study showing that sort of a single landlord like Mr. Onder is a much better choice for families than these corporations. that are snapping up homes like this.
you know, a better choice than corporations, sure, but the best choice is to let young families buy these homes. When you have investors, whether they're big companies or just wealthy lawyers like Mr. Onder, come in and buy the homes that young people would traditionally buy and get started and maybe trade up a little later, and instead Onder's buying them. And when he says that, oh, he's helping with affordable housing, that irritates me. If he would say, hey, I'm doing it because it's a safe investment and I want to make more money than I already have, I go, well, at least he's being honest. But this is a terrible thing to do to young families, buy homes that otherwise they'd be able to afford.
Well, I think he also bought the old movie theater right there, and he had
Ozark.
Yeah, the Ozark, and he had. Remember the story? He's got big plans for it, and he's going to do it. I don't know if he's started on that.
He has since said that he no longer has big plans for that because there just wasn't the desire from like the theater community that I think he was hoping would be interested.
Okay, well, see,
So he has abandoned that plan.
All right.
And
Yeah.
maybe some of the other ones will fall because the some of the properties that are being rented have not been maintained. At least it didn't sound like, according
That's exactly
to
what
the story.
you said. And,
Yeah.
hey, no one ever washed a rental car. And renters, by and large, with exceptions, don't take care of their properties as well as people who own them, with probably more than a few exceptions. But nonetheless, Alvin, I want to ask you about a choice that the governor has. Mike Kehoe has to decide when to put that measure, asking Missouri voters if they will reduce and eventually eliminate their income tax. Where is he going to put it? On the November ballot or the August ballot? He wants that income tax down to 0. If he wants to do that, where should he put the ballot measure?
Well,
November or August?
Okay, from all indications, November is going to be a fury of individuals that don't like the direction of the state, the country, Governor Kehoe, and these petitions, to get things on the ballot, have 350,000 signatures when they needed 100. And, I think the governor will choose August because, like I said, all signs are pointing that it will not be a big night. I mean, Republicans outstate will hold their offices. But other than that, there's going to be a groundswell of, we're not really happy with what's going on right now. So that would sink the income tax.
I gotta disagree with you. I feel like the August voters, we few, we proud, we are the high information voters.
I voted August.
Yeah, no, you too. I put you in this group. And I feel like your high information voter is coming in going, what is Kehoe doing? This is ridiculous. They have no plan to make up this revenue that they're just gonna be chucking away. Whereas your low information voter, who's more likely to turn out in November, they're going to go, oh yeah, okay, let's just do it all sales tax. That sounds great. They say this thing polls pretty well, even though intelligent people seem dead set against it.
Well, I would say highly motivated rather than high information.
Sure.
I mean, if there's a particular issue that draws them to the August ballot, they might know little about Mike Kehoe's plan. So
So would you do
I think I'd go with November too if I were Kehoe.
I don't see the income tax issue as a blue issue or a red issue. It's a math issue.
No,
the
that's
math,
what
yeah,
that's
the
what I
math
mean.
isn't mathing.
Well, put
Yeah.
it this way. Okay, I'm going in vote Democratic. I might just be compelled to vote against this because he wants it. But there'll be a sizable enough number of Republicans that won't want this either. And if you get 10-20% of one group on top of 80% of another group, you're going to win.
Yeah.
And I think that's enough that would make it a loser, especially in November.
Wendy, the Post-Dispatch has a 5-part series that kicked off on Sunday, taking a look at downtown St. Louis and its woes. And the first thing I remembered was in 1980, when John Carpenter was filming Escape from New York in downtown St. Louis. He told Harry Dean Stanton and Kurt Russell and Ernest Borgnine and Adrienne Barbeau, and she shared the story in her memoir. He said, don't leave the hotel at night. Downtown St. Louis is too dangerous. And this report started off with the perception of crime in downtown St. Louis. Do you think this report which hopes to eventually rejuvenate downtown, will bear any fruit.
My dad was getting his master's in St. Louis at St. Louis University in the early 70s, in 1970, and he wouldn't let us come downtown to pick him up. I mean, those were difficult times for everybody, but every major metropolitan city, I think, has the same kind of cycle. And then you have the salad days where everything is terrific, and the Cardinals they've got 2-3 million people coming downtown, and everything is vibrant. Is it vibrant a la Chicago, or is it vibrant Los Angeles or vibrant New York? No, but it's a great vibrancy, I think, that we had for a very long time. We do not have it right now. I know you and I disagree.
I do disagree because I have articles in a whole file from through the years since I got here in '88 on the problems of downtown. Charlene Pro of the Post-Dispatch in 1996 had a story about how it's silent and shabby and nobody's coming to downtown.
Okay, I moved back and I was working downtown for a couple of years in 1995. So I was working there. I'm sorry, but what was described in that article was not what I was living. I was not afraid when I was downtown. At lunchtime, you'd go to the restaurants, and if you didn't get there early enough, you might not have a place to sit. I don't know.
Oh, and I remember when there were little businesses, and I got here in 1980, and in the early 80s, in the Olive Street building,
Right.
On the 6th floor, there'd be a jeweler. There were these little.
Was that the Paul Brown? Was that the Paul Brown building?
Thank you, the Paul Brown.
Yeah.
There were these little businesses everywhere,
Yeah.
and I thought it was quite lively town.
Speaking of that, we just lost Bob Boymer, who is the owner of Hamilton Jewelers. He died just a couple of weeks ago.
Great.
He
And
did
they were downtown.
He did the time
Yeah.
thing during the ball game.
Yes,
Yeah.
Remember that?
I would have speaking engagements like you did, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and at 11 o'clock, 11:30 sometimes, felt completely safe.
Your wedding was
Walking
in downtown
That's
St.
right.
Louis.
Walking
Look,
to the stadium
I
east.
currently feel 100% safe in downtown St. Louis. I know everybody doesn't believe me on this, but I'm wandering around there by myself, after midnight, and I think there's no problem there. I think the thing about downtown, when I moved to St. Louis about 10 years ago, Wash Ave was popping, and it was a lot cooler than it is now. But guess what? Now, downtown West is popping. It's a lot cooler than it was when I moved here. And so when the Wall Street Journal did that whole story about the doom loop, I'm like, yep, you picked these couple of blocks that are very sad. The thing about St. Louis is we can't support the vibrancy of this entire area of downtown and downtown West. And so as soon as something gets good, something else gets bad because there's just not enough urbanists here.
I don't think it's going to come back because there's not a constituency. It's going to take money, and other neighborhoods, there's like 80 neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis, they're all going to want the millions of dollars that'll be required to rejuvenate downtown. And there's no constituency. There's no businesses. There's no residents. Who's going to advocate for it?
I will say, if you listen to what aldermen are saying and listen to a lot of what us city dwellers are saying, we are in favor of putting a big chunk of money into downtown because we understand that for St. Louis to attract people who are younger than I am, we have to have a better downtown.
and
have to have
that's
a
really
corporate-
what-
you have to
We've
have
been
a
saying that for
corporate.
40 years.
That's what the Post-Dispatch story's been saying. I mean, Kevin McDermott, who's been writing it, has pointed out that, yes, there's a lot of problems, but you have to start.
Yeah.
You have to try to.
We've been starting. I remember when your colleagues at the Post-Dispatch had a big roundtable at 900 North Tucker, and Joe Edwards was invited, and all the leaders, what do you call them, stakeholders, and they were all coming up with
Change
solutions.
agents.
Change. This was the mid-1990s.
Right, that's true.
But they always do the wrong thing. They always think, let's build something big. When what people really want is a drugstore, a bakery, the small things,
Supermarkets, yeah.
people on the sidewalk, whatever you can do.
Well, and there are people
Nightclubs.
working on that. There are,
Right,
I've
right.
written about this guy, Alex Oliver. He's just one example. If they can get, block by block, you can make this thing cool again. And yes, it should be out of the hands of the civic progress crowd.
But we
to-
we're
tried
not even talking
that. We tried that with the McGowan brothers. We
We
tried
had
that.
Oh, no,
corporations.
Charlie, what-
We were the headquarters of corporations.
Yeah, and
gave me
we
a
don't
block.
have
And
them
we
anymore.
don't have that
And so we
anymore.
don't have that
And
help.
don't
If you
forget
gave
the
me a
pandemic.
block, Alvin, all right, dude, you got a block, all right, and you 10% on what these buildings are, what would you do it? I'd said, it's going to be the swingingest block in the Midwest, and I'm going to have 24-hour security walking up and down the street, and on
who's
this...
gonna pay for it?
Me,
Where are you gonna get your
somebody-
money?
No, you said you need to start. I'm telling you where we
Well,
start.
how are you going to do that,
Oh,
Alvin Reid?
You could do this. Somebody said, okay, Reid, I'm in with you on this block, and we're going to make this block happening.
They did that on Washington
No, they
Avenue.
didn't. Charlie,
They pumped
let me-
federal dollars
one
into there.
block. One block.
The
No,
problem is
because-
Alvin's block will rob from the block that's currently popping.
Right.
That's the whole
See,
problem.
The problem with Washington Avenue, you're trying to serve too many different, masters, so to speak. I'm talking about on this block, it's going to be nightclubs and it's going to be bars. And
That
you're
was
gonna have a
Washington
good
Avenue in
time.
1990.
No, it's
Washington
still-
Avenue
and
ever
people
come
who
back
live there
after
said
Busch
it's too
Stadium.
loud.
Okay.
Right.
I'm
After
just telling
Ballpark
you.
Village.
I mean, how does Beale Street work? How does, all these different places have one place in town where if you go there, you can hang out till 3 o'clock in the morning, you're safe, the police see to it.
Well, you know
bring
what?
your
You know what
money,
happens, Alvin?
and bring a smile.
And this is true because other neighborhoods aren't going to just give up. They're not going to lay down their arms. The South Grands, the Main Street in St. Charles, the Kirkwood and Kirkwood, they're all going to continue to expand, and that's great competition for downtown.
No, I can tell you what. I can
In 10 seconds.
Give me my block, and you'll see.
Actually, Joe Edwards said that back, and Mark Wrighton said that too. Let's divide it up and let people
Oh,
do
and
their thing.
speaking of, I think the loop trolley season starts
It did.
tomorrow.
It did start. You're right.
Hey, this past week's been a tough one, and a lot of you have shared your thoughts about Ray Hartmann, and we thank you for doing that. We thought we'd share a few of those with our viewers. Thank you very much for sharing your remembrances of Ray Hartmann. We will continue this program with another half hour, so don't change that channel. You can always find all of our programs on the Donnybrook channel on YouTube. And please remember to subscribe by following that QR code. So we will pay tribute to and remember our great friend Ray Hartmann as we continue on 9 PBS. Thank you for joining us.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.